Well, hi everybody. Well, another special day because any day we can drink wine together is a special day. This one may be a little more special because we're in Tuscany, and I'm sure you all know, it's been said a million times that prior to coming here, I spent the previous 20 years at Valentino Restaurant. And although working at Valentino gave me entree to more than just Italian wineries, I did take advantage of the Valentino name and visited just many wonderful, wonderful wineries in Piemonte and in Tuscany. And I chose to taste Tuscan wines tonight because I think they're a little more familiar. Certainly, when we think of Tuscany, where the first thing that comes to mind is Chianti. Chianti is probably the most famous wine produced in Italy. And so, of course, tasting a Chianti tonight is a requirement. But I've added on a couple of other wines that are, well, perhaps less famous, but are still key to understanding the wines of Tuscany. And so now we can look at, of course, where do I always start? Google Earth. We're going to look at Italy, and here comes Italy. And I hope you can see on this map here that in the north, where you see Switzerland and Austria, well, of course, that is the Alps, and the Alps curve around southwest, and they meet up with the Apennines, which is the spine of mountains that runs down the center of the boot of Italy, actually going down into the toe and onto the island of Sicily. You can see that mountain chain just working its way down, and the Apennines come around the Mediterranean and meet up with the Alps. And the Apennines create different climate zones. It raises the elevation, which, as we know, when we go up in elevation, the temperature comes down. And when you consider that we're in the middle of the Mediterranean, moderating, or the ability to moderate that heat, is beneficial to the growing of grapes. And so there it is, that beautiful boot of Italy, where from north to south and the islands, everywhere in Italy, and there are 20 states of Italy, all of them produce their own regional wines. But we're focused on Tuscany. And so the next picture here is going to give us, well, actually, maybe it's going to give us another look at the boot. This time we're talking about the different regions of Italy. And if you look, you see Sardinia in the Tyrrhenian Sea, and above Sardinia, it's not labeled because it's actually part of France now, the island of Corsica. And just to the east of Corsica is where you can see the green area of Tuscany. And that's where we're, of course, focusing our attention right now. Our next slide will bring us down just into Tuscany, and you see all of that color in there represents the different wine zones within Tuscany. And if you see that kind of I don't know, what do we call that green? Well, sort of what do you call that green? Anybody want to give me a name for the which green? Army green? Okay, let's call it army green. The army green in the center there, that's the region that we call Chianti Classico. And Chianti is not the only Classico region found in Italy. Many of the famous areas have their Classico regions, and I'll come back to that in just a second. Perhaps we'll call it the olive green, just to the left bordering Chianti Classico, is the region where our white wine comes from. The white wine is the Vernaccia grape, and it comes from the area of San Gimignano. And so Vernaccia di San Gimignano, classic Tuscan wine. And then, so that's wine one is the Vernaccia, the green, the army green in the center, that is our Chianti Classico Reserva. Again, I'll come back to that. And then the third wine is in a category of wine that's really has no color zone here, because it's an unofficial classification that has come to be known as the Super Tuscan. And of course, I have stories for all of these. And so let's look at the next slide and we'll dive into wine number one. There it is, the village of San Gimignano. And you can see just at the bottom of the picture, this picture is taken from within a vineyard where the Vernaccia grapes are grown. And as I say, this is classic Tuscan wine. Okay, I can take it over from here. And of course, I can't. I've been tasting this wine, trying to decide the best way to describe it to you. Of course, let me refresh my memory. It all comes back to me now. So when you smell this wine, I believe the first impression that I get from this is almost a marzipan quality, and almond, a sweet almond. Well, marzipan is a sweet almond paste. And we have that almond mixed with lemon and green apple and maybe nectarine aromas. I read and then I forget and then I go back and I read again. So if you read through the text sheet we sent out, it says for fermentation, of course, the wine is these grapes are all harvested by hand. And this is a lot of handwork in the vineyard leading up to the harvesting of the grapes. But then after the grapes are harvested, it says fermentation, after a short maceration on the skins. And that part of that is what's creating this marzipan aroma. The skins from white grapes, obviously white grapes have no pigment. Otherwise it would be a red wine. White wine, when we leave the skins in, will give a little bit, maybe even a little bit of dry residue on the teeth. But more importantly, the must with the skins is open to the air. And I think that too is part of the aromatic here, which, whenever I talk about nutty descriptors in wine, forget about the nutty descriptors of Paul. The nutty descriptors of wine are aromas of oxidation. And I go back to this all the time. You should not fear oxidation. Oxidation is and can be an important complexity in wine. Of course, if it overwhelms the wine, that's what we call a wine flaw. But otherwise, it's just part and parcel of the character of the wine. You know, when we think about winemaking in Italy, Italy was a little late to the dance with wine, and you're saying, what are you talking about? Thousands of years they've been making wine in Italy. Yes, this is true. But if you understand that Italy didn't become a unified nation until really the last piece of the puzzle of Italy was taken back after World War I from the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And so not having a unified nation until 1920 meant that it took time for the establishment of government in all of the states and working their way into regulating and don't get upset with me when I say regulate. You know, when we talk about wine laws in France and Italy and Germany, all of the laws that have been established were established by the people of the region themselves. The government simply came in and said, we love this tradition of winemaking that you have here. And we want to make sure that we can preserve this tradition so that our children and our children's children will all be able to enjoy this wonderful treat that you're creating. So let us know, what are the boundaries of your area? What are the grapes that you grow? What is the method that you go by to create this wine? And we will establish that as the law of the land. I think that's me. If it's my wife texting me, I'm going to kill her. Oh yeah, it's my wife. It's my wife. Honey, I'm turning you off. There you go. Sorry. Okay.
Your second wife?
Okay, bear with me. So Vernaccia di San Gimignano is this classic white wine from Tuscany, from the San Gimignano area. And, you know, as I say, all of the boundaries and the law of the land was established. It didn't even start getting established until 1963. In France, they did the same procedure starting in 1935. So this is an ongoing process. What I love about the Italian system is that it's open for change. And I'll come to that at the end when we discuss our Super Tuscan wine. It just my neuroses. I had a certain spot and it got moved. Okay. I'm fine. So the classic wines of Italy are given a name. It's Denominazione di Origine Controllata. And it just means the region of origin is controlled. It's controlled by the people of the region who set the boundaries and the laws. But then certain wines that were more acknowledged because they became household names. Many of these wines became household names. And so those wines that really stood out over the rest were given an added notation so that the Denominazione di Origine Controllata è garantita, this guarantee of authenticity. And so Vernaccia di San Gimignano was elevated to DOCG status in, I've already forgotten, but I think it's like 1995. The first DOCGs were Brunello di Montalcino and Barolo in 1980. So this has been an ongoing evaluation of the wine regions and those wines that deserve extra recognition get that G, that garantita status. So Vernaccia di San Gimignano and Chianti, whether it be Chianti Classico, all Chianti is recognized as a special place made by the grapes that grow in that place. It wasn't an arbitrary thing that the government came in and said, you know, from now on, you say you're going to grow this over there and you're going to like it. No, it's the opposite way around. Sangiovese grape of Chianti, and I have already jumped ahead, but I'll come back. Sangiovese was the main grape of Chianti, and so that's how the laws developed. That the government may have overstepped its bounds is another story that is also covered. So Vernaccia di San Gimignano, let's stop talking and let's start smelling and tasting. So, right, we got the citrus, we got tree and stone fruit, we've got the slight marzipan, Meyer lemon, thank you. And, That's a sunrise. And again, you know, you taste it, you feel it at the sides of the tongue, the acidity is bright, it's refreshing. And, you know, that little bit, I don't know, I'm sure I'm just making up because I read that they macerate the grapes juice with the skins. But I kind of feel like there's a dryness to this wine that and that create where there's a lingering aftertaste in this wine. That's just great. That's the sign of a quality wine, that flavor lasts with you. And the longer it stays with you, maybe you won't want to go back. But yeah, I do. I want to go back. So, okay, I'm happy now. Okay, let's look at the map. And we'll go to the next slide. Here we go. Dive into Chianti. There it is. So if you look at this map, this is actually, again, the map of Tuscany, but we're focusing on Chianti here. And of course, the red in the center where you see Greve and Rada, these are two villages that are within what we call the Classico zone. What is the Classico? Well, I'm sure many of you can remember. Those of you that weren't alive can't remember. But those of us that were alive know that in the 60s, there were classic wines from Italy brought over to America, and Chianti was one of them. You found it in the Fiasco bottle, which is that bottle with the straw covering. There was Bartolino, there was Suave, right? These were, and it was all Rufino, right? Or Bola, Suave Bola, Chianti Rufino. So these areas that where their wine was in such demand that they were selling all the wine that they could make. And the only way to make more wine was to make the region a little bigger. So that's exactly what they did. They expanded the Chianti region to meet the demand for their wine. And so increase the region they did. If you look at all of the yellow areas, and the green areas. You see to all the way to the west, well, not all the way, but it says Chianti Collina Pisane. So they expanded it out to Pisa. And you see the yellow area says Chianti and up in Pistoia. And you see the purple above Firenze, above Florence, it says Rufina. So you can see that from that red area in the center, what did they triple? They tripled the size of Chianti to meet the demand. Well, if you were a winemaker in the original area of Chianti, I don't know about you, but I might be a little ticked off. Hey, that's my wine. What, those bums, they make my wine? No, no, no. So they said, no, they don't make a you wine. What? They can't make a you wine. You are Chianti Classico. So the growers within the original Classico region were given that recognition of this wine comes from the Classico. Now, I would say that the wine from the Classico will, of course, have the original terroir, meaning the soil, the climate of that area is unique. But I can also say that there were some, where they would grow to the limit or maybe going a little over the limit of allowable fruit on each vine. And so, more fruit, less flavor. So it's possible to have not as good Chianti Classico and somebody in the outer area of Chianti that's trying their best to make a good wine, maybe is going to make or is going to grow much less fruit on their vine to ensure concentrated flavors. So it's possible to have a really great Chianti and a not so great Chianti Classico. I actually believe that these days, the quality level across the board has risen dramatically. And until you go to Tuscany, and there you might get, the best of the wines are what get brought over here. So we're really very spoiled. And you'll go to a restaurant. I know when Wendy and I were in Florence, and I'm saying, yeah, I'm going to get a bottle of wine, and she's hitting me in the ribs. No, we're going to drink the local wine. And so we drank the local wine, and it tasted great, but mostly it tasted great because we were there, and it was just such a treat for us to be there. We could have had maybe something a little better, but it's okay. I have something better before me. What's the next slide? So the next slide is short and sweet because it's just the vineyard area of this wine that's just on the north side of Greve in the Chianti Classico, Tenuta di Nozzole. And so Chianti is the place where they make this wine, and the dominant grape is required to be Sangiovese. Sangiovese is the most planted black grape in all of Italy. It's from north to south, Sangiovese is grown. An argument can certainly be made, and I've probably drunk that Kool-Aid, or I've probably drunk that Sangiovese to believe that Tuscany is where the best Sangiovese is coming from. Some of Italy's most long-lived wines are made from Sangiovese from the region of our Super Tuscan that we'll get to. So, although Sangiovese is the dominant grape of Chianti, when the laws were made, because the tradition of winemaking in Chianti was Sangiovese dominant, blending in some of the other local grapes, originally the law required that those local grapes be used. In fact, Some of those local grapes were white grapes that, like, I think 2% of Chianti was required to be made from these local white grapes. And I kind of truly believe that that was a little bit of protectionism to back up the growers that were growing those grapes and needed a market for the grapes. So that little part of the law did not endear many of the winemakers to the law that had been established after 1963. This Chianti that we have turns out is 100% Sangiovese. And I'll come back to how that occurred after we go through and we taste. But let's talk briefly about Sangiovese. It is a high acid grape. You know it, I love it. It is a moderate, medium to thick-skinned grape, depending on the clone of Sangiovese that we're using. Clone of Sangiovese, what is that? Well, all of these Vitis vinifera grapes, all the grapes that we use to make wine, these vines are prone to mutation. You take a vine out of its native habitat, you plant it elsewhere, it's going to adapt to its new home, and the elements are going to cause subtle mutations. Sometimes they're dramatic mutations, but when you can still detect the same DNA, but we can see subtle changes in the structure of the grape clusters or in the thickness of the skins, the size of the grape. These are what let us know that it's still Sangiovese, but it's a different mutation. And then we clone it, we propagate by, rather than taking the seeds and growing the seeds, we just take a cutting and stick it in the ground, and that cutting will become a new vine that will be, an exact duplicate DNA-wise of the vine that it was cut off of. And so we can clone vines to exactly replicate, as long as we're doing it in the same area, and still you might get further mutations. That's just the way it is. So somebody has a question? Oh,
two questions.
Two questions, okay.
The first is from Stephen Petty.
Stephen Petty's asking a question.
Are you familiar with the Riccasoli family and the Olio Castle in Chianti?
Yes.
The inventor of the Chianti.
That's Chianti. Chianti. The H makes the C hard like a K. Actually, if there's ever an S sound in Italy, it's from an S, because C is only going to be ch or k. Moving on. So, of course, the Barone Riccasoli was responsible for creating the original Chianti laws. Whose pocket was he in? Or, oh no, I mean, maybe he was the owner of those vineyards with the white grapes and needed a market for them. I'm a cynic, so that's the way I'm going to paint it. But so yes, the Riccasoli family was, and it was the Baron Riccasoli that was responsible for the original Chianti laws. There was a second question.
There is from
Devoni Wolfus.
Yes,
coming in for dinner soon, I see.
It tastes to me like there's a smidge of effervescence in the first wine.
Oh.
Why might that be? Is that because it's in the soil? Thank you.
Devoni's asking about a subtle. What did you ask that question last week with the Riesling? Somebody else said something about effervescence in the wine. really, I think that is just the product of the acidity. And like I said last week, there's always going to be a blast of CO2 in the bottle to keep it fresh, and some of that dissolves in. What was the no at the end from the soil?
Is it because of
Nitrates in the soil? I do not believe that is the what does that in the wine. Nitrates in the soil, and other elements, important elements in the soil that the vines need to grow and to create, it just fell out. The green. What's the green? What's the green in the leaf? The leaf is green. Chlorophyll, right. So it's scary, isn't it, that you have me doing this? Chlorophyll, right. That's the word. It fell out. So, for example, we need iron. The plant needs iron to create chlorophyll, and the chlorophyll, of course, is responsible for the photosynthesis reaction with the sun. So soil elements are important for vine growth, but I don't think that they have anything to do with effervescence in the wine. Okay, back to Chianti. So when I describe the Sangiovese grape, I think it's a mixture of red and black fruits. There's always a green element. I often, especially from the Sangiovese grown in Tuscany, which is often referred to as the Sangiovetto, I often find or describe the green elements as more towards tomato leaf and basil. We can often get tarry, earthy soil. There's a mix of soils in the Chianti region. Limestone, sandstone are commonplace throughout the vineyards here. That adds this mineral aspect to the wine. There's also some floral, besides green, maybe lavender. I'm bad with my flowers, to be honest with you. But this does come off ripe. I forget already because that's what I do. I forget things. 2016. So 15 was a hot vintage. 16 had some more challenges, but this comes off with lots of concentration and ripe fruit. Again, you can feel the acid. It's dry. Just moderate tannins on this. The drying on your teeth, it will build, but I would describe this as a medium tannin wine. I might get put, if you pushed me and said, oh, I think it's more than that, okay, maybe medium plus tannins. Some Chiantis can be pretty high tannin. And, the amount of tannin, of course, that's along with the color that leaches out of the skins to make this wine red. The tannin is in the skins. tannin is a natural preservative in wine. If you like strong tea, then you understand tannin because the very drying nature in black tea is the tannin that's in tea. How much we manipulate, or bad word to use, punch down when the wine is fermenting. Yeast eats the sugar, it's making alcohol, it's creating carbon dioxide gas also. And as the gas bubbles rise to the surface to release out of the fermentation tank, they're going to carry the skins up to the surface of the fermenter with it. And of course, we want the skins in the fermenting wine to extract the color and the tannin. So regularly, we're punching down those skins back into the fermenting wine to get that color and tannin taken out. But the how many times we punch down, or sometimes we're just taking the lazy man and getting and pumping the wine over so that you don't have to do this. How often you punch down will determine how much extraction. For this wine, because it's really kind of still translucent in color, we can still kind of see through the wine. I think that they did a little less of the punch down, not wanting to make too tannic a wine so that it'll be nicer drinking on release. Now, this is a Reserva. And Reserva is speaking to the quality of the fruit. They're using better fruit that will then take a little extra aging. If you see a wine labeled Chianti and it just says Chianti or Chianti Classico, it can be released pretty much a year from the harvest. Actually, I think after October 1st, the year following the harvest, the wine can be released. But a Reserva has to wait for 2 years after the harvest because it has to spend a little bit more time in barrel and in bottle to give all of those qualities and the tannins time to come together and relax. And so this Reserva certainly does present with that concentration of flavor that proves itself. I think Tuesday night we're having spaghetti and clams, and I think the vernaccia would go really great with spaghetti and clams. But this Chianti and the finish, I get a lot of that green herbaceousness, like that basil or tomato leaf on the finish. So, you know, tomato leaf and basil. Gee, what do we find that on? Pizza, pasta, or your bolognese. This Chianti is going to be great with all of that. In case you were going to ask me what we should eat, beat you to the punch. Cheers. So let me look quick at my cheat sheet here. 14% alcohol on this Classico. So that's just proof of the concentration and the ripeness. Yeah, we got another. They're telling me, somebody has a question. What's the question?
A lot of people are having discussions.
Oh. Thank you.
Pairing it with applewood smoked salami.
Oh.
Really,
hey,
yeah.
You know, I come home at night, you know, after the restaurant, I get home at night, sometimes a little hungry. And I say, honey, if you would just leave me some salami, you know, I'll cut myself some salami, I'll have a little cheese, I'll have a little snack before bed. That way you don't have to make me anything. I'm good. Well, Oh, I couldn't find any good salami. Devoni, where did you get that salami from? Would you let us know so I can send Wendy to the store and get me some darn salami? It making me so angry. So I'm sorry, what was the question?
More of a statement. He says he thinks that it would impair greatly in smoked brisket or smoked.
Smoked brisket or smoked ribs? Well, as long as the ribs, I dig the smoked part of it, but if you're gonna use a sweet, like a barbecue sauce like that, not gonna make it for me. I like the smoked part of it. Yeah, I get this kind of mineral, and why not? Yeah, I applaud your creativity there. Oh, we have another question. Martha Anderson is asking a question off of Instagram. Whoa! Yes. Tenuta. What is the tenuta? It's the farm. That's all. The tenuta is the farm. Yeah. What's from Trader? Oh, it's from Trader. That's okay, honey. Go to Trader Joe's. Get me some darn salami. Okay, thank you. Okay, so why Trader Joe's is gonna give me some salami now because I said that, right? Okay. So let's go back to my storytelling. So I told you that the Chianti laws were a little overly strict, saying that they were pretty much giving a recipe of grapes that were required to be used to make Chianti. And so that started in 1963. And, there was a lot of grumbling and groaning because if you didn't follow the recipe, then you weren't allowed to call your wine Chianti. So Chianti was the wine that was making money. So we're gonna just, grit our teeth and make the wine. But finally, one family said, I'm not gonna do this. No, I'm not gonna do this. So what did they do? They decided, okay, we'll partially play ball. 75% of the wine that they made started from the 1971 harvest. 75% of the wine was Sangiovese. But the 25% balance, they decided, no, I'm not going to use those white grapes. I'm not going to use the other local black grapes. The 25% balance is going to be Cabernet Sauvignon, a French grape, huh? I love telling this story. So, of course, not playing by the rules, not following the recipe, they can't call the wine Chianti. But you got to sell it as something. So they decided they were going to call the wine, give the wine the name of the vineyard that it came from. And that vineyard name was Tignanello. And the family that made this wine was the Antinori family. And, back in, this was the 71 harvest, the wine was released in 74. In 1974, there was either the classic Chianti or whatever it was, or Vino da Tavola, plain table wine. Those were the only two classifications of wine in Italy. So it wasn't Chianti, so it defaulted to a table wine. But the Antinoris, who have been making wine in Tuscany for 650 years, a respected family, when they came out with their Tignanello, a table wine, charging $25, 74, $25 table wine. Table wines in 74 were 50 cents a bottle. Everybody's saying, what's going on? And of course, the Antinores were making a statement, you, government, you protect us, we'll make the wine. Don't tell us how to make the wine. So, of course, the wine was good. They were using their best fruit. And as soon as everybody tasted it, they said, wow, this is special. And then all of the neighbors saying, oh yeah, me too, me too. So then all of a sudden out of the woodwork started coming these wines that were no longer labeled Chianti, that had a proprietary name that they were marketing the wine as. And, when all of a sudden the marketplace started getting all of these wines, people didn't know what to call them. How do you sell this wine that nobody's ever heard of before? And someone in the press, in writing about the wines, said, you've got to try these new super Tuscan wines. And so that name stuck, and it created an unofficial subcategory of wine from Italy called Super Tuscan. Super Tuscans began as either 100% Sangiovese, that some wines were, or that were blended with Bordeaux grape varieties. And it has been now, 45 years, right? 45 years now that this unofficial subcategory has become world renowned. And some truly remarkable, some of Italy's most sought after wines now, besides the classics of Brunello di Montalcino or Barolo or Barbaresco, some of the true classic wines of Italy are really in this category of Super Tuscan. Wines like Tignanello and Ornellaia. I would add Sassicaia to that, but the addendum to the story and what I was talking about earlier, how the Italian system is a living system. And what I mean by that is that they have decided that if your experimental wine, that's what Tignanello was in the beginning. It was an experimental wine. It could have flopped and everybody would have said, no, this isn't the way we like it, and nobody bought it. But because it was an experiment that succeeded, if that experimental wine can continue to show consistency of quality and of place, then today's experimental wine can become tomorrow's new tradition. And they can apply for DOC status and become a denominazione di origine controllata. So the wine that's maybe the most famous Super Tuscan along with Tignanello. Tignanello today is still just what we call an IGT, and I don't have time to talk about that. But Sassicaia has been now elevated, so it's Bolgheri Sassicaia. Bolgheri is the region, and it's the Sassicaia wine from Bolgheri, is a tradition in itself. And I think that's a wonderful thing that that new traditions can develop over time. So that brings us to our third wine, which is a Super Tuscan. This wine is a Sangiovese and Merlot, or actually it might be Merlot dominated with Sangiovese. And let's look at the last couple of slides. Actually, there's more than two. So we're back to our map of Tuscany, and you can see you see Florence and Siena. Florence and Siena are pretty much the north-south boundaries of the Classico zone of Chianti. And then just south of the Classico, that circle on the map there is the area that demarks the Montalcino zone. And the wine called Brunello di Montalcino is a wine made from 100% the local Sangiovese that they call Brunello. In fact, this is a mutation of Sangiovese with smaller grapes and thicker skins. And those thick skins have a lot of tannin. And again, I said tannin is a preservative. And so Brunello di Montalcino is one of those long-lived red wines from Italy. At Valentino, we had an Biondi Santi, who is actually the family that discovered this mutation of Sangiovese. They are one of the most classic of producers of Brunello di Montalcino. At Valentino, we had one of their Brunellos from 1891. Piero received that bottle of wine after the Northridge earthquake that had a tangent that ran through Santa Monica and shook Valentino bad. He lost a lot of wine. And but because of the restaurant's fame in the world of wine, wineries, especially in Italy, opened up their cellars to help Piero rebuild his cellar. And that's when he received this bottle of 1891 Biondi Santi Brunello di Montalcino from their personal library. It's one of 5 bottles in the world and is something very special. So we can look at the next slide, which brings us specifically to the Montalcino area, and all of those red dots are the different wineries that produce wine in Montalcino. The wine that we're going to taste today comes from that area, and if you look to the lower left, you see the village of Camigliano. So this winery is north of Camigliano. It's like halfway between Camigliano and Montalcino, is where we have the Luce winery, and this wine is their Lucente. Where's my cheat sheet? Come on, I gotta cheat. Yes, Merlot, I believe, is the dominant grape variety. Merlot, but it's close to a 50-50 Merlot Sangiovese. I think these are 2 grapes that have a lot of simpatico, because Merlot also has its own kind of green leaf complexity to its aromas and flavors. Merlot is also red and black fruit, so we can describe the 2 grapes similarly, although if you taste them side by side, you can taste their differences, but blending them together really kind of gives a rich and deep combination of aromas and flavors. I think also because now this is the thick-skinned, the Brunello clone, or what we also call Sangiovese Grosso, clone of Sangiovese. So a lot darker fruit coming from it, and from the Merlot. Still that there, although this is more black fruit dominated than the Chianti, there is still some hints of red fruit in there, a little bit more of the tar. We get the green aromas, and maybe some violet flowers. I'll be right there. This one's ripe, rich. A little more red fruit on the palate because due to the acidity of this grape, showing those red fruits. They were kind of hidden on the nose under the black fruit, the blanket of black fruit on the nose, mixed in with that tar and floral. That's a pretty darn good wine right there. Yeah, I kind of like it. Let me look at the next slide. So, I mean, there you go. That picture says it all. This gives you an example of Montalcino, the area, the lands, these hillsides. It gets pretty warm here. We're kind of in the interior of Tuscany. And so the warm Mediterranean climate, it does cool down at night, but not like some other places that have a strict diurnal of hot days and cold nights. It's a smaller range of temperature fluctuation that really ripens these grapes. The elevation does help somewhat from the Apennines, but you can taste and feel the richness of this wine. Is there one more slide? There we go. So I wanted to show this picture from their website because here we have the two men that came together to make this all happen. The man on the left, I always forget his first name, Vittorio Frescobaldi. Just like the Antinoris, the Frescobaldis have been in producing wine, although they were in the banking business 700 years ago. The family's been producing wine for hundreds of years. And so they are well established they are part and parcel of the land and the tradition of winemaking in Italy. The man to the right is an American by the name of Robert Mondavi. And Robert Mondavi was a very important figure in wine and winemaking here in America. He was the instigator of many great changes to winemaking in Napa Valley. But also he was an ambassador for Napa Valley, going around the world and not only learning from the places that he would and people that he would go and visit and bringing some of that knowledge back home, but also there bringing his wines around and letting people know that the Napa Valley was capable of making world-class wines. Robert Mondavi partnered up with Philippe de Rothschild from Chateau Mouton Rothschild to make Opus One in Napa Valley. He partnered with the Frescobaldis to make wine here. So he was a very, very important person that I have great respect for. The fact that when he sold his empire for $1.2 billion before the time of billionaires, of course, that deal was $900 million, bought everything out, and the buyer also had to pay another $300 million in debts that they owed. But hey, all's fair in business. So these are the men that helped create this wine that we're tasting today. And I think it is a classic example of Super Tuscan, of the mix of modern tradition, of tradition and and a little bit of modernization. But actually, what Robert Mondavi brought was marketing skill to the table, and he was a marketeer of Napa Valley and a marketeer for this new style of wine coming out of Italy known as the Super Tuscany. So that's what I got to say. What do you got questions?
Joanne Bourne, I think it's Joanne Bourne.
Joanne Bourne is asking.
It would be possible to wine dinner, a winemaker dinner on the roof from September or October.
Oh, a winemaker dinner. Well, you know what I want to start with, and I hope I'm not, or you can come to my backyard and we'll all have a party. But we are talking about starting chef's table up on the roof. And the chef's table will be a set menu made by the chef, of course, taking in your personal dietary restrictions. And then I will pair wines to match each individual dish. And Andreas and I are looking forward to having some fun with this because that's what we do. So stay tuned for that. I hope you'll all want to take advantage. Or if we do more than one, I don't know how we're going to do more than one in a night. So I guess it's going to be. That's all I know. I'm already beyond my knowledge base as far as the chef's table. But winemaker dinners, we just. It's hard these days. We want to do winemaker dinners where we can have more people than what the roof can accommodate. Question?
A bit off topic from Lauren Daneliak. Sorry.
Lauren Danelac, yes.
A bit off topic. Ask a question at the end. This weekend I opened a French wine and there was some sediment on the cork. I haven't seen that before and wondered what made.
Good question by Lauren. Talking about sediment on the cork. So now, Lauren, I'm going to ask you a question. Were those crystals on the cork? So before wine gets bottled, it will be quickly chilled. And when you do a quick chill on wine, tartaric acid will crystallize out and fall out of the wine. Then the wine will be siphoned off of that sediment, and those tartaric acid crystals will then be used to make, are there bakers in the house? Cream of tartar. So you see, cream of tartar is a byproduct of winemaking. Sometimes if wine is held in too cold storage for too long, further tartaric acid will settle out of the wine. So, and sometimes it attaches itself to the cork, especially if the bottle's been lying down on its side, it has easy access to it. If you ever find these crystals at the bottom, it winds up in your glass, fear not, it's organic, it's not going to kill you. It feels terrible in your mouth, and then you're going to please, but that's all you're going to do. It'll just be unpleasant, but not harmful. They were crystals, yeah. So that was probably tartaric acid that crystallized.
Peter Schultz.
Peter Schultz.
Which wine pairs best with prosciutto?
Which wine best with prosciutto? I think the Vernaccia or the Chianti will go well with the prosciutto. White wines go well with prosciutto, usually because they're higher acid, and we want that acid to help cut some of the fat in the prosciutto. Yeah.
Chris Dorrell asks.
Who?
Chris Dorrell.
Chris Dorrell, yes.
With all the amazing wines from Italy, how did you narrow down the choices at such a price point?
Asking. With all of the great wines, how did I come to these? Well, first of all, we were just Tuscany. I wanted to do a Vernaccia di San Gimignano DOCG. Lately the Vermentinos from Tuscany have kind of staked their claim. And I am a huge fan of Vermentino, although my favorite Vermentinos come from Liguria, like where Cinque Terre is. That's where some of my personal favorite Vermentino comes from. So I chose Vernaccia because it really is classic Tuscany. We did Chianti Classico, and Nozole is a solid producer. But of course, the bottom line on all of these is that I'm trying to, in all of these tastings, I'm trying to accentuate value. And it's easy to spend a lot of money and have a great wine. It's a little harder to spend less money and still have a great wine that sometimes drinks better than much better than the cost. That's my goal always.
This question coming from Wendy Lindsay.
Wendy Lindsay is asking,
how soon before serving should we open the wines for receivers?
Well, that's a good. So the question is, how soon should we be opening the wines prior to tasting? I think our white wine was fine from the beginning. There are certain white wines that really could use some aeration. There are some Italian whites, some French whites that I actually decant to just mix air into it to help kind of bring them out faster. But most white wines are good with a little, just prior to drinking. Of course, all wine is going to open up in the glass through the course of your meal or through the course of our tastings. I think both of these reds, because quite honestly, I just opened and poured prior to tasting. I think they're all showing pretty well. Certainly, I could have decanted both of these wines prior, and I might have done that if I was sitting down to a meal. I might have decanted both of these wines. But that good question. I don't know that I have a specific answer for you. The red wines, if you had opened and decanted them within a half an hour to an hour before the tasting, they would probably be showing as well as they are showing now that they've been open for that amount of time. If you're going to be saving them for another time, though, you might want to just open it and see how they develop through the tasting, and that way you can still have the cork in and save them for another day in your refrigerator, as I've said before. Leah Huska.
Jane Leah says, thank you for the great presentation. We love the wine choice and my favorite cheese, prosciutto. It was like being in class with you all over again. You're the best, Paul. We support the winemaker.
Well, I'm not even going to tell you what she said because she's just, not asking the question. She was just saying thank you for a wonderful time. And I hope you're all having a wonderful time. This is fun for me, so I can do this, all the time. It's a joy. It's a pleasure to always present wine, talk about my favorite subject.
Great question.
Oh, we have a question.
Chris Wormuth, how long can these wines be aged? How will they change at all?
Chris?
Wormuth. W-A-R-M-U-T-H.
Chris Wormuth is asking, how long can these wines be aged? The company that I bought the Vernaccia from, they had this 2019, and he had some 2016, I think it was, maybe it was 17. I opted for the 19 because I kind of think Vernaccia in particular, this is a light white wine. It's 12.5% alcohol. Oh no, it's 13. Oh, I thought on the text sheet it said 12.5. See, they tell you two different stories. But either way, this wine is pretty light, dry. Wines like Vernaccia are best drunk young. So I think this is a wine that, you know, you could buy a case of this and just, you know, drink it through this year. And then, you know, next year we're going to have the new release. And I think that's what's best for wines like Vernaccia. I say the same thing about rosé wines. Rosé wines are best drunk the year of release. So the 2019s are in the market. The 2019 rosés are in the marketplace. Drink them now. Oh, and I think I've come to the conclusion, Sasha, I'm talking to you through them, so I think we're going to taste Zinfandel next. I'm not sure in what order. Zinfandel, Syrah and Rhone blends in one tasting, rosés, and I think I'm going to do a traditional method sparkling wine. So I think that's going to be the next 4 of our month block of tastings. I might take a little 2-week sabbatical in between. People are working me to death. You're working me so hard. So yeah, there you go. Did I answer a question? What was the question?
How long can the wines?
Oh yeah, so the red wines, how long can the red wines be aged? Wow. Okay, so this is a 2016 Reserva. This is 2020, and this wine's drinking pretty good right now. I say this wine's probably good for the next 3 to 5 years, the Chianti, in proper storage. And proper storage for me is 52 degrees. The range of storage temperature is said to be 52 to 56 degrees. If you can keep it at 52 degrees, you will get dramatically longer life than if you age it at 56 degrees. So I always say 52 degrees is optimal long-term aging for wine, and this Chianti is good for another 3 to 5 years easily. The Lucente is 2017. This has a lot of fruit concentration in it. And even though this is the entry-level wine for the Luce producer, actually, I'm going to kind of put it side by side with the Chianti Reserva and say that both of these wines are good for easily the next 3 to 5 years. They won't be bad 6 years from now, but they may start to lose fruit. That's just off the top. Okay, so thank you everybody. You made my night, and I'll see you next week. What are we doing? What are we doing next week? South Africa. Oh, it's going to be fun. Chenin Blanc, Pinot Noir, and Syrah from South Africa. Until then, ciao.